Hello, everybody. We are back with our second episode of Two Minds, Many Biases. It's an action packed episode, and we walk through high stakes situations like real estate purchases and salary negotiations. Pawan is here to guide us through why this happens and how to combat it.
Isn't it scary how an initial number, even though a random one, could strongly influence our judgments and estimates? Do watch out to know more what's happening in our minds and how do we counter it.
See
Thank
you
you.
in the episode. Back with our second episode of Two Minds, Many Biases. And last few days, I was thinking about some of my events in the recent past related to uh, something which happens, which is known as an anchoring bias. So the incident is related to basically the recruitment space, where initially, as you all are aware of, when we start off, we are in conversation with the recruiter, and the initial conversations about, once you explain what your role in the industry has been, they will prompt you with a question of what was your last drawn salary. And this is often used later on when the offer is being rolled out as a negotiation tactic, as an important point. And I thought ki this is such a widespread practice, let's understand this a little bit more. So Pawan is here today, and we'll do a deep dive into our cognitive biases topics, and we'll pick this one as a talking point. So welcome, Pawan.
Hey, Pankaj. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
तो पवन
Yeah.
बताइए मेरे को, जैसे when this happened the last time, very recently actually, I tried to sway away from this basically point. I try to say कि नहीं, I think we can talk about this when we reach there, या फिर let's talk about a range, etc. But sometimes recruiters, see, they are masters at negotiation, right? And often we basically don't realize some of these factors, how this plays on our mind. But it may seem like a casual conversation, or they may say it is needed for administrative purposes, but later on, the numbers which you provide, right, this will be an important factor in deciding how they will shape up the final offer. So what do you think, what are the factors which happen here, if you can shed some light on this?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you have hit the nail on its head. A lot of these folks are actually, super negotiators and compliance manipulators, I would say. So they are well versed in these techniques to influence compliance to whatever they intend, or whatever they want us to do. And anchoring effect is a very strong cognitive bias which plays a role in the sense that whatever initial information that we are presented with when we have to decide something, the way we make those judgments is by adjusting away from that initial point of information. And that initial point, it doesn't even have to be a relevant or it could be completely arbitrary point of information, but we just keep on adjusting away from that point to reach a plausible point which we think is fair when it comes to decision making. But very often the adjustments that we make, they are insufficient. So like in case of salary negotiations, the recruiters know that most often people are not going to accept an offer which is below their current range. So they people are going to accept anything which is above their current salary range, but they don't want people to go a lot beyond the salary range. So even if, say, the budget for a role that you are interviewing for, it may be 2x of your current range, but it is not in the recruiter's interest to maybe tell you that the budget is so high, because if the budget is high, you will expect, or you will anticipate to ask for a much higher number. So what they do is they like try to put this anchor in place by asking you your current numbers, and so that becomes an anchor, and then you start adjusting bit by bit away from that anchor. So you may ask for a 20% hike, 25% hike. You're not going to ask for 100% hike or 50% hike. So that is how this plays a role in negotiations, and not only salary negotiations. Even in, say, when you are going to say purchase a house, the seller will quote a price, and like especially in the current real estate market that we are seeing in a lot of metro cities in India, like they quote any arbitrary price. It doesn't really reflect the current fundamentals of the market. But they will quote any price, and most often the price at which actually the transaction takes place is a lot, like it's much nearer to the price that was initially quoted by the seller than what the property actually deserves. So that is again a very prominent case of how anchoring bias impacts our judgments.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. About the second one, also, I have some experience in the recent past purchasing some property and then also seeing how the price may seem to just shoot up. And at some point, like the increase in prices, like particularly in areas like Bangalore in the last few years, is phenomenal rise. And whether that is actually reflective of the ongoing supply and demand, you know it's not clear, and often the builder will just quote something and then you will end up mostly buying around that.
Yeah, true. Like supply and demand does play a role, but whether it explains, the frenzy that is going on in the market, I'm not really sure if it explains, everything. Anchoring bias plays a very strong role, in my opinion, and like there is also fear of missing out, because people think that if they don't buy it now and some other their colleagues are buying property, so that is also playing a role. But anchoring bias does play a very strong role.
Got it. So this kind of yeah, you're talking about the frenzy and the FOMO effect, etc., and the kind of pressure somebody when looking for a property experiences, it almost feels like you have to make a call within a span of a few weeks, otherwise the property you are looking at, maybe you will not get the right orientation, you will not get maybe the right height, the flooring and this and that, or you may not even like get the right builder. This all plays a role, and you end up making this is a very big decision for somebody.
Yeah, and like if you notice, if you go to any builder, they sort of try to like manipulate you by creating this artificial pressure. They will tell you that sir, the prices are going to increase next month, so if you want to lock in, you have to lock in the next 2 weeks, or sir, these are the last 2 units we have available on this floor. If you want these, you will have to lock in the next 2 weeks, otherwise you will have to look for a unit on a lower floor. So they try to create this artificial pressure so that you are like pressurized to take the decision as quickly as possible. And when you have to decide something quickly, you tend to rely on these mental heuristics, which are nothing but biases, and that is when these cognitive biases like anchoring bias and all, they kick in.
Got it. So definitely, I think this example about real estate is a very good example where there are other factors and the bias comes in, and then at that price point, somebody kind of justifies it to themselves and makes the decision. What about like maybe a different kind of setting where somebody has more time and maybe is being a lot more calculative, and still the anchoring bias may happen? Is there something like that also which comes to your mind?
Yeah. I mean the sad story is that we are cognitively wired in a way to make use of these heuristics which have evolved over like millions and millions of years, and which help our brain conserve energy. Like if someone was to like really think about something and spend a lot of time and be very objective, then definitely I mean these biases can be like kept at bay. But most often, even when people are say they are an expert in their domain, so they are really thinking very objectively, and they have a lot of time to make the decision. Even then these biases, they do creep in without us realizing. And I can give you like a few very interesting examples.
Sure.
uh, like in one example, there was a study done in a supermarket wherein they put a soup on sale. So the price was discounted, it was put on sale, and they noticed that on an average now people were buying around 3 cans of this soup. 3 cans of soup per person. It was being bought for a couple of weeks. Then they arbitrarily put a like a constraint that one person can buy maximum of 12 cans of soup.
Okay.
A very arbitrary number. If you think objectively, it shouldn't impact your judgment of how many cans of soup you need to buy. If when there was no constraint, like when you could buy 100 cans of soup or 1,000 cans of soup, and you were buying only 3 cans of soup, so now this artificial constraint of 12 cans per person shouldn't really impact your decision. But after this constraint was put, they noticed that on an average, people were buying more than 7 cans per person. So, this anchor of 12, it started impacting, people's decision making and judgment of, how many cans of soup they need.
Interesting.
Another
Interesting.
another similar example, and like one could say that in a supermarket when people are buying soup, they are like not being very objective, not being very rational. Like no one is stopping to think whether I need 3 cans of soup or 5 cans of soup. So another example which is similar, but it applies to like people who are in their workplace in a much more objective setting that one would expect. So this study was done with judges in Germany.
Okay.
And what they were made to do was they were made to roll a dice. But the dice was rigged. It would either show a 3 or a 9. These were the only two numbers that you could get when you rolled the dice. So if a judge is rolling the dice, he or she would either get a 3 or a 9. So they first, made the judge roll a dice, and then the judge would, listen to the case and, pass the judgment. So what they noticed was judges who rolled 9, on an average, they sentenced, people to 8 years or 8 months of prison time. Judges who rolled 3, they sentenced people to 5 months of jail time on an average for similar crimes. So again, like these are 3 and 9 are very arbitrary numbers, irrelevant to the case, shouldn't impact the judgment. And judges would say that we are being very objective. I'm listening to what the the appellant is telling me, what their advocates are telling me, and I have all this prior experience in judging cases. But these two very irrelevant dice rolls of 3 and 9 actually impacted how they judged those cases. So
Okay.
yeah, like we are cognitively
This is very,
wired to give.
This seems too weird. Why don't you engage me with, like, let's do some sort of live demonstration of this, right? Maybe.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, okay. So let me ask you. Do you think the tallest tree in the world is more than 1,500 feet tall or less?
Okay, so tallest tree. I know that we have tall coconut trees, and these are, I don't know, these seem like maybe 50 to 100 feet. But we are talking about tallest tree in the
The
world.
tallest tree in the world, is it more than 1,500
Yeah,
feet
I've
or
definitely
less?
heard about these redwoods, which are like 700, 800 years old, and yeah, these are like huge. So Yeah, it could be. It could be taller than that. Yeah, it
Okay,
feels like
okay.
that. Yeah.
So and so if now if you were to take a guess on the the approximate height of the tallest tree, what would that number be?
Yeah, this like a person is 6 feet, 100 people is 600 feet. Yeah, it could be like I don't know 2,000 feet.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So the tallest tree in the world is around 380 feet.
Oh,
And like in the similar question, like it has been presented to multiple people like us in multiple experimental studies. And what has been observed is like uh, people tend to overestimate the height of the tallest tree when the initial anchor was 1500. So when I asked the question as if the tallest tree is more than 1500 feet or lower, most of the people guess that tree to be much higher in height than it actually is.
I
If
see.
I pose the same question as if the tallest tree is 500 feet tall or lower, the height of the tree estimated is much closer to 500. So like again
Got it.
a very like strong example of how irrelevant numbers actually impact our judgments. Like another very interesting example that I read somewhere was in an experiment they took a wheel of fortune and they again rigged the wheel of fortune to either the arrow should either stop at 10 or 65.
Okay.
So before the experiment started, they would roll the wheel of fortune. They will like spin it, and it will stop at either 10 or 65. And then they asked the participants, like what is their estimate of the number of African countries in UN. So whenever the arrow stopped around 65, people tended to give an answer which was closer to 65. When it stopped at 10, the answer was like much lower, closer to 10. And nowhere in the question like was it mentioned that the wheel of fortune is related to the experiment or it is
Right.
related to the question. There was no such thing. It was completely irrelevant and arbitrary. But just by seeing some information, you answers that you tend to get from your mind, they tend to differ basis what you are presented with.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean, this is huge, right? Because this perhaps maybe in marketing, advertising, some of these things also creep in, and people who understand these things well, maybe they use some of these biases to some
Yeah.
extent.
I mean, yeah, these are like again very pervasive. I mean, we would like there is I think hardly a day when you don't encounter situations where we are getting anchored to some irrelevant piece of information, and we are actually blindly making a decision under that impact, and we are not even aware of it. I believe there is hardly a day when these kind of things don't happen.
So then it begs the question, what can we do to be more cognizant of this, or to defend against these biases while making crucial decisions?
Yeah, I think one thing is obviously to understand why these biases happen. So I think before I talk about what we could do to counter the biases, I'll maybe spend a few minutes explaining why these biases happen.
Sure, sure.
So like as I said, like all these cognitive biases, they are mental heuristics which our brains have evolved to take decisions very quickly and like conserve energy. So one thing which is like which acts very strongly in this is the whenever we are presented with any information, it kind of activates the uh, neighboring areas in our memory networks.
Okay.
So like whenever we are presented with any information, and now then if we have to say make a guess or make a decision, we tend to get that information from neighboring areas in our brain, which are, say, semantically similar or numerically similar. So I think this priming, like priming you for something. For example, say if you are trying to, like, if you are in the market to buy, say, a Birkin bag, which is like ridiculously expensive, very high price. But when the price is very high, it activates, those regions in our brain, which are like associated with luxury, or something which is very premium. And then we tend to, like those areas, they get activated and they tend to influence the way we are making our judgments. The second thing that is happening is, I think I mentioned initially also, is that whenever an initial anchor is set, we tend to move away from that anchor in order to make a judgment. And most often the movement away from that anchor is very insufficient. It is not sufficient enough, and that happens because the movement that we need to make away from that anchor, it involves like it so like there are two parts of our brain. Like, there is an autopilot, which is called system one of thinking,
Right.
which relies on quick thinking, quick answers. And there is the second part of brain, which is called system two, which is like more deliberate, like more objective. But in order to like engage system two of thinking, it like needs a lot of energy. And our brains, like, they want to conserve energy. They like lazy thinking. So when we have to move away from that anchor in order to make adjustment, we most often stop very early. Like, we don't make the right adjustment, because making that adjustment requires us to engage system two of thinking, which requires more energy. So we want to conserve energy and we want to be lazy, and hence we stop much earlier.
Okay.
The third thing which happens is, whenever we are presented with like an initial, say an initial, price point. Now, our brains, they start thinking whether this is a plausible price point or not. And then, like, they try to, like, prove confirmation hypothesis, whether this price is right or not. And so, rather than like looking for examples which actively contradict that piece of information, we are looking for examples which like confirm that piece of information. So here again, like, confirmation bias also kind of kicks in, where we are maybe actively selecting those examples which make this price point look plausible. So for example, like when we are doing a price negotiation for a property, and even if the price is a bit higher than market price, we may in our minds think that, okay, the price in this area may may rise in the next few years, because a metro is going to come up, and like more offices will come up, and more people are coming in Bangalore, so the supply demand situation will change. And we try to we try to prove that hypothesis rather than contradicting it. So these three things that are happening behind the scenes are actually making us more and more prone to this bias. So the way we can counter this bias is obviously first being aware that we cannot eliminate it. We are cognitively wired to think in this way, and like this has served humans in a like for a long time. This has served us well. It continues to serve us well, because like if we had to stop and think objectively for each and every small decision that we have to make, we would be tired very soon. So we tend to like we need to rely on these heuristics. But whenever we are in a situation which actually requires us to be very mindful and very objective, we need to be aware that the anchoring bias could be playing a role here. So we need to stop. We need to think if there is an anchor in place here. And I think then once we know that there is an anchor in place here, we can either come up with our own anchor. So like when I asked you this question of the height of the tallest tree, you actually were trying to do that. But I think like if you had maybe spent some more time, you would have got to a more accurate answer.
Yeah. I was thinking like maybe I should do some arithmetic on how wide the base is and accordingly how tall it could grow.
Yeah.
So that, but I was too lazy to do that. I knew some numbers, like I think that a car could pass through it, so
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
how wide the car is, maybe twice or thrice of it, and then do some kind of like maybe take like, I don't know, again I will have to take a guess of like 50 times of it or 100 times of it. uh, yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe that would have been a way to go. But again, as you were saying, right, if we do objectively everything, right, there is this decision fatigue which also comes in, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So we try to short circuit
Yeah, and
as much
like
as
that
possible.
is why we just need to be aware that these are the situations which are worthy of objective thinking, where if we fall prey to anchoring bias or any other cognitive bias, the price that we'll pay, or the cost that we will have to bear, is going to be prohibitive. Hence we need to engage our system too. But if this is a like something which doesn't really matter a lot, I mean, it's okay if our biases are kind of running the show. It's completely fine. But the problem happens when people tend to overlook these biases, even in like making decisions which can actually like impact the course of your life. For example, a salary negotiation, or buying a house. So it is very important to be like stop and be aware of whether it is impacting you or not. Then be objective, come up with your own anchor. Once you have your own anchor, it kind of debiases a bit. For example, like if you remember our like parents, or people in their generation, like they were super sharp negotiators. I mean, I remember my mother, like if I go into a shop and if someone is trying to sell me a thing for 2,000, maybe say, oh, it's too high, can we get it for 1,800 or 1,900? My mother in same position, if someone quotes 2,000, she will say 200. That completely debiases. Like there is no impact of the 2,000 anchor, because the new anchor is 200, and then the negotiation begins. So I think,
Right.
but like I'm not saying that you should start with a really low anchor, because it can backfire also. If suppose you are in a salary negotiation, and if
Yeah.
you quote a 200%
No,
higher
I
number.
can totally relate to this because when my dad, he retired and he purchased something as an investment, he was quoted a price of close to 35 to 40 lakhs. And he said, I can afford 20 lakhs.
Hmm.
And then the deal happened at like, I think at 21.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have never been able to, pull that off.
Yeah. So I think like creating your own anchor, I think, is very important. I mean, just be sure that the anchor that we are creating is, again, like it's not ridiculous, because if it is ridiculous, it can like end the negotiation completely. So we don't
Right.
want that a
Right.
lot of times. Then the other thing which plays a big role is like delay the decision making if possible. So the case that we discussed earlier, wherein a real estate agent is trying to create artificial time constraint that in the next 2 weeks the price will increase. If you can like delay decision making, I think what that does is like it also sends the signal to other person that this person is like not in a hurry. So the if you want to bring the anchor down, it is much more possible. But it also gives us the time to go back and then think more objectively, compare it with other benchmarks that we have. So most often people fall prey to these biases when they have to make a quick decision.
Right. Yeah.
And
About this one also, I think after my first purchase, I did go back to the same builder asking him, hey, I spot that you have another property coming up in the vicinity, and what's going on. Show me some of the property details, and then they try to press me. But then this time I was in no hurry at all, right? So I listened to everything. I came back, and then they said, yeah, everything is going to be sold in like a matter of weeks or this or that, and they kept on calling me for 6 months.
yeah,
Now now it's closing in on almost a year, right? So yeah, with time, even they would, the whole pressure tactic will just fall apart, right?
Correct. Yeah, so I think these are like some of the like things that we could do to lessen or soften the impact of cognitive biases, but it is like not possible to completely eliminate.
Great. These are great tips, and thanks a lot for sharing this. So, yeah, in our journey to learn more about these biases, maybe you can give us a sneak peek of what more to expect in the next episode. Today's been like a long one, but yeah, I think we wanted to take our time to understand this one well. What do you think we could plan? Maybe some possible topics to keep our audience coming back.
Maybe, I mean, we could talk about other similar cognitive biases which impact us on a day-to-day basis. Like another such bias is availability bias, which is something very important. And the thing is like, if something is available for a recall much easily, then we tend to overestimate the probability or frequency of occurrence of that thing, and how it impacts our judgments and decision making is something that we could cover in the next episode.
Interesting. Great. Yeah, I think each of these, as we understand them well, will become more cognizant of their occurrence and be mindful. So
True.
great. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Pawan. So appreciate the time you are sparing to teach us about these concepts in detail. And yeah, we'll catch you sometime very soon and have another chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Take care.